Can you hear anything? He'll take 30 seconds in the delay. Yeah, we're up and running on YouTube.
Scott is out of order and is in contempt.
Get after him.
He's on his way.
Hey,
He's
we're
kinda
enough though to
stuck
be a
in
quorum. I'm happy for us.
traffic.
It always makes me sad. There should be more people here for our budgets.
Okay. All right, welcome to the June 4th North Logan City Council meeting. We will excuse Mark, who's out of town currently, and we'll excuse Buzzy, at least for the moment. He is stuck in traffic on his way back from the airport. In fact, I told him I would call him, and I will have him on my phone until he gets here in person. Okay. Let's see. We will have our opening ceremony. If Joni, if you would lead us in the pledge, and then after which I'll lead us in the prayer.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Father in heaven, we're grateful to gather here today as city council members and staff of North Logan City. We ask that thou would please bless our efforts today, that we may have clarity in our decision making, that we may consider those aspects of the matters before us with fairness and with justice in mind. Please help us. Please bless our community, our city. Continue to bless us with great community and togetherness, and please help us to continue to make our community thrive. We're so thankful for all that we have, and ask that please bless those council members who are away from us, that they may be safe in their travels. And we ask these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Yeah.
Okay, we will start tonight by approving tonight's agenda.
So moved. Ooh,
Okay, I'm going to give that to Joni
Joni.
as a motion, and then Emily as a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that motion passes. We have a few minutes from our previous city council meetings. We have our regular set from our most recent meeting on May 14th, and then we have our LBA and RDA from that same date, and then LBA and RDA from May 4th. April 9th. I have emailed some changes to Scott that we'll kind of include in the motion. They're not substantive, but can I get a motion on those meeting minutes?
I move that we approve the minutes of the previous city council meetings as listed.
Okay, motion by Emily,
Second.
second by Kenny. Any further discussion on those? Did anyone else identify any other changes? Okay, then all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. We're just gonna assume Buzzy's in on that. Buzzy, do you want to weigh in on that, Buzzy?
Sorry, Olivia, I can only hear you right now.
Okay. Okay, we'll just do Buzzy as a no vote on those meeting minutes. Sorry, I'd had you muted. Okay. Okay, so we'll move on to recognition of an exemplary staff member. Today, that is Zach Root. This was submitted by Chief Thompson. On May 19th, 2025, Truck 120 responded to a reported hazmat leak at 2300 Green Canyon Road. The initial dispatch reported a leak from a 150-pound chlorine tank at the water treatment plant, with workers already in the process of evacuating. Upon arrival, the crew of Truck 120 established Green Canyon Command and made contact with the on-site employees, John and Keaton. They explained that a valve began to leak while they were attempting to shut down the chlorine system. They reported a clearly audible leak, and the building's alarm activated as they evacuated. The Truck 120 crew then began to isolate the affected area and guide individuals to a safe location. We'd like to recognize Zach and his team for their quick actions in evacuating the affected area, protecting themselves and others from injury, notifying dispatch, and providing pertinent information that resulted in rapid mitigation of the chlorine leak. I'd like to add my congratulations or my commendations to Zach. I think we're in really great hands where water's concerned. And also thank you to the fire department for responding so quickly. So join me in giving them both a hand of applause. Okay, with that, Chief Thompson, would you like to give your report?
Hear from me, I guess, a couple times tonight if we make it through the agenda. We're going to go over some fire mitigation, a couple things. Fire department calls were steady, pretty flat during May, quite honestly. Looks like calls are up about 1.3%. We just barely pulled the newest information for the month. So the monthly report should be out by the end of next week. Looks like we ran a total of 72 calls in North Logan this last month compared to the month before at 55. So for the year total so far, we're at 384, which is up about 1.3%. We did run a building fire in April, and of course we had this event that could have been the one we just talked about with Zach, which could have been super serious. You know, chlorine leaks are no fun. They're can be super dangerous. So well done. And then, yeah, I think I'll leave it short right there, and we'll talk about a House bill that I've been talking to Alan about. I want to show you a couple of new maps that we need to be aware of just in terms of mitigation and what's coming from House Bill 48, which is a new law that is going to make a lot of people potentially on the higher east bench a little concerned. So we'll go over that later.
Okay, sounds great. Thanks, Chief. Okay, Chief Goodrich.
Thank you. Mine should also be fairly short tonight. So one of the things that I've been asked to do is by both cities is to kind of break out the calls for what each city is taking and what the officers are, the time that they're spending in their particular city. So between the two, we had 112 calls this week, or this past week. 86 of those were for North Logan, the highest being animal problems followed by medical emergencies. In Hyde Park, it was animal problems and then accidents. And so those two seem to be the top every week, week after week on that. As we look at the calls for the year to date versus 2024, for the month of May, we were actually down 27 calls from where we were last year. So it dropped our overall percentage down to about 5% instead of 8% where we were before by the end of April. So it's still kind of steady. We're still seeing an increase on there. Our guys are busy. With particular to North Logan, our guys made 42 traffic stops during that time, and they came in at about a 71% warning to 29% cite ratio, which is a good ratio to have. They're finding and focusing on the people that they need to and citing those, but also warning the majority of the public on that. We are seeing a lot of problems still with 2500 North, people going through the intersection of the road closed. In fact, right before this, Officer Bell issued a citation to a lady who went right
I didn't
through.
know that you physically could. So noted. Like go through still. I figured it was a big hole.
Yep, people are moving the signs and going through anyway.
So case in point, like right now you might be able to get through, but that will end early this next week. So right now they've installed all the utilities, but you couldn't get through during that time. You would have fallen into a deep hole in the middle of the road. But now they've filled in the holes, but then they'll start doing the actual road construction this next week. And so again, do not drive through that because it can be very dangerous to the vehicle and the passengers in the vehicle.
It's been an area that we've tried to focus on because it is a constant problem. Every weekend, it seems like every day, it seems like there's something going on there. So with that, we're gearing up for the other things coming up, the parade on the 24th. We've met with the CERT workers who are going to be helping for that and trying to coordinate with Alan and the city on how we're going to help guide that. So other than that, that's kind of where we're at.
Hey, Chief, I saw your report on the Sierra on the motorbike kind of around the city. Anything you want to speak to with that? Because I think, at least on the bench, I see a lot.
That is a huge problem. For the chief who, or for you guys who don't know, back in March, I was elected onto the Utah Chiefs of Police Board as one of their board members. With that, this last board meeting, I presented a question to them about e-bikes and what concerns other chiefs are having in their cities. And unanimous, every chief, it seemed like that was there, and those on the conference started talking about problems they're having, similar to what we're having here, of people chasing kids on the bikes and having some dangerous situations, the kids being in places they shouldn't, kids going 50 plus miles an hour down the road, popping wheelies and no helmet and into oncoming and back, just extremely reckless on that. And so I was asked to present some ideas of here are our concerns that we have. We came up with 7 of them. The kids are effectively interacting as a vehicle with zero training, zero understanding of the dynamics of a vehicle, the dynamics of braking and what it takes, how to avoid the crashes, how to be safe. And there needs to be some other type of thing, some training involved on that. So coming up on the 19th of June, we're having our first work session with the legislative committee for this next year's legislative session, trying to figure out how we can help with that problem because it is a statewide problem. Everywhere, every chief is having issues with that.
So as a community, like if we see that, do we just,
Please call it in
okay,
on that. With the reckless driving that we're seeing and that I'm stopping and that my officers are stopping, it's a matter of time until we have a fatality on it. The kids don't have an understanding really of the speed, of how quickly things happen and the time it takes for other vehicles to stop. We're getting reports of kids turning in front of vehicles at night, at dark. It's a matter of time. And so we want to know when those things are happening. And it's an issue in Hyde Park too. The kids are building and going off of the dirt track up here at Elk Ridge Park, and they shouldn't be on that. They're going off of the retention ponds, just places that they shouldn't be. So please let us know and we'll deal with that as we can.
okay.
Other cities have been starting to impound them on that as a safe keep. Our other departments have. We haven't got to that point yet, but we have issued citations for reckless driving to 15-year-olds on that. So.
Okay,
They're
all right.
also, they're those little, like a skateboard, but they stand on it and it zooms up and down. We get 3 kids.
The
usually.
one wheels, is that what it is?
Yeah, the one wheel unit.
They're-
Well,
and it lights up so you can see just a small like ball part that goes down the road, but
they're subject to the same rules that a bicyclist would be.
Mhm.
They can't interfere with traffic. They can't go into traffic like that. They're supposed to obey the signs. The same thing that they're supposed to signal with their hands or make the motions of where they're going on that. And quite often we don't see that either. So those things are dangerous to the motoring public.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Okay, Alan, let's talk about our action items.
I'll go quickly through these, Mayor, because the meeting has a lengthy agenda and we'll go over several things on this list. But jumping down through water, we'll give an update at the end. Sewer, just an update on that. We'll talk about this in this meeting. Sewer master plan is near finalization, and the trunk line will finalize the bond in the coming months. They have a new employee from the state that's actually working with our engineer to finalize that now. And that's for the trunk line that goes out to the Logan Lagoons. Streets, the surface treatment projects are coming up. That will be Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday this next week. There'll be flyers on the doors, a Parliament message that goes out, probably community-wide, and then Facebook messages that will also go out. Just letting people know when these surface treatments will occur. It's pretty extensive, the work that these guys put into notifying the residents about a surface treatment.
And where is that, just roughly?
So there's 4 of them. It's 200 East by Thomas Edison, It is Mahogany Ridge, the entire neighborhood. And that they'll identify areas where you should park cars or trailers. It's really well done. The maps that they'll put on every single door. It is 2100 North from 6th East to 16th East. And I'm blanking on the last one. 2500 North is the other one, and it's just a short segment there east of Elk Ridge Park. It's just the stub that they have to do.
I'm just curious, does that affect how the, like, post Google Fiber going through, does that kind of, will that go over that little trench that they've dug?
Yeah, and the other areas where they doesn't do that, they'll come back in and they'll actually seal on top of that
Okay.
area that's already gone in. So it's another layer of seal that will go over that once they're all done.
Okay, sounds great.
Jumping down through, we'll go over some items for stormwater, but they are also applying for a grant for a stormwater master plan. That's something we haven't had in North Logan City. So that'll be good to have, and that'll guide like capital improvement projects in the future for stormwater. More regional facilities and pipes that connect to the canals is what that focuses on. Engineering, the 2850 North project is well on its way. That's the one down by where Rush Funplex will go in. That will tie into Main Street as it comes out there. That's part of that application with UDOT to tie all those together. Parks, the splash pads are up and running. Hats off to the Parks Department for getting both of those. They've had some breaks and other things through the past several years, but they've got them both up and running now. And they kind of alternate days, so there's always a splash pad running in the city while still conserving water. Going down through here, Bonneville Shoreline Trail. I think it's safe to announce this, but the city has received just over $1 million grant for the Bonneville Shoreline Trail. We already worked with the other surrounding communities to the north. They received their portions, and then North Logan City lined up to receive our portion. So we received 2 grants in the past 3 years for that trail, and we'll push that forward at this time. That's fantastic news, though, for that trail to tie that together. It's been requested several times. Recreation, if you just go over to the right along these columns in column C, it just says recreation open for, registration open for. There's like 20 different classes, workshops, programs that the recreation department's putting together right now. Just extensive things taking place. And we'll go over some of the events coming up in the coming weeks. Cemetery, thanks to everyone for their help with Memorial Day. That was a fantastic program, great weather, which isn't always the case. We lucked out that day, but thanks to everyone for a wonderful tribute and a great program that day. Jumping down through community development, there'll be several things this week. They'll be talking about, I was trying to remember the 2 key items. Maybe Scott can update me. I forget what items are on the agenda.
Yeah, we've got 2 subdivisions that are on the agenda this week, both single-family subdivisions. And then we also have a work session to talk about some more general plan code updates in Title 12 to our land use ordinance.
And there's several other things on the list you can see going down through there. I'm just going to jump down through. We'll go over several budgetary items tonight. Library, they're helping with the actual installation of things in the library. So audiovisual, electrical, they're helping with several things through that. Things they probably hadn't anticipated being involved in, but it's part of a new building coming in. Police, we've gone over the items there, and fire department. We'll talk about a few more things related to each of the budgets of these departments tonight, but I skipped over those pretty quickly. Are there any questions that anyone has on any particular department or anything?
I don't think so. Anything from the council? Okay, then with that, let's move on to our action items. We'll start with a public hearing to receive public input on a proposed revision to the fiscal year 2025 municipal budget. The city council may consider approval of a resolution following the public hearing. Who's going to take us through this one before we open it up for the hearing?
If you want, this is a very lengthy PowerPoint. So this covers all the next 4 or 5 agenda items. But what it talks about is all the revisions for this year and all the proposed proposals for next year, just the key elements of each department.
Okay.
I don't know if you want me to just skim through that and get through these, and then we can open it up and answer questions at that point.
Let's go through the PowerPoint, and then we'll do the public hearing, and we'll discuss as a council.
Okay. So just jumping down through here, just department by department, this coincides with the budget, how it's laid out right now. Probably should be organized a little bit differently, but we'll just start with fire because it's the top of the list. There's no major changes coming up for this year. The next year, there's a 3% increase, and then there's also a $40,000 shortfall that we need to talk about for the proposed budget. The big kicker, though, is the FY27. That's when the additional employees are added per the agreement, and also some of the capital items that we've been working on. Chief's been working on a SAFER grant that might help take a little bit of the edge off of that addition. But these are things that we will have to talk about in the coming weeks and months to solidify. But jumping down through building inspection, this is actually a really good relationship that we have with Hyde Park. We used to have our building inspection under the city's umbrella. We would have a net loss every year of $100,000 to $200,000, no matter what, out of the building department, regardless of how many building permits came in. And since we've contracted with Hyde Park, we net usually around 30 to 100,000 in positive, which goes to offset a lot of the administrative time that our staff spends on taking care of permits. But that's fantastic. It's about a $300,000 swing every year by doing that. And again, no major changes proposed this year or the coming year. The building department, economic development, it kind of goes over some of the numbers here and why this department is so crucial to bringing in money. Just roughly since we've created this department, every year the city nets roughly $520,000 from the economic development department after all expenses are made, which is pretty significant if you think about that over our entire budget and our sales tax allocation. So that's been great. One minor change though is this next year, some of the council members may not be familiar with this, our sales tax allocation to the ice arena will end this December. And that was set up several years ago, and then it was extended for a few years. But the ice arena has an endowment that they've set up, and they have a few other funding sources, and hopefully they'll be self-sustaining at that time. And so they won't need that allocation. So 50 to 60,000 will come back to the city each year at that point from that sales tax allocation. Community development, this department, it goes over the changes that are proposed in this current fiscal year and the coming fiscal year. Everyone knows that this past fiscal year was extremely busy for the community development department with the general plan rewrite and the city center plan. Both of these had substantial grants to help with those processes. And then this coming year, it's kind of just updating everything according to those plans. That's kind of a very brief summary of everything that will entail, and everyone's familiar with that after having gone through that process. We also have a new planner one who is here in attendance today. Aaron, if you want to raise your hand. Great addition to our planning department. We're really excited to have him here. Streets, as we go through this, just so you know, the streets department's fantastic. They've literally kind of turn this around. And I know I've told a lot of the council members this story, but we would update every week to the city council all the roads that needed to be completely replaced throughout the city. It was a list of probably, I'd say 10 to 15 roads that we would report every council meeting to the council. And now, because of the efforts of Colby, because of the increased efforts in surface treatments and everything else, I never thought that it would flip to this level where it's a maintenance level, where he needs to maintain the roads, keep them up. And that's basically what our funds go towards, which is a fraction of the cost. It's a lot more in surface treatments, but overall, one road that we've had to replace, those cost $200,000 to $300,000 to replace. And so he's kind of replaced all of those different roads that we were replacing each year with just doing surface treatments. So that's fantastic. One other minor change in this current fiscal year is that a few years ago, Rocky Mountain Power didn't support LED lights. So we started buying the lights, and North Logan City owned and operated the lights, which was really bad if a drunk driver took out a light for whatever reason, or there was a wreck and we had to replace it. It was very expensive. But now Rocky Mountain Power does support LED lights. And so now Rocky Mountain Power started putting those in, and we're working together on just a plan to swap out several of the lights throughout the city to bring them up to date under that plan. And then all the road projects you see down below. Most of these are through grants, if not all of them. The only one that's not is 2850 North down by the highway. which is partially paid for through some other methods, including the RDA. But 12th East is the grant, 2500 North, 800 East roundabout, 3100 North, 12th East roundabout will apply for through the COG. 200 East, and all these projects are obviously coming up this next fiscal year, potentially. And that's why it's going to be a busy year coming up for road projects. But again, none of the major projects are coming out of the general fund of the city, which is incredible. Parks are just extremely efficient. That's basically the notion that we get there, meaning that most cities that are about a fourth the size of North Logan as far as parkland is concerned, that matches the budget that we spend on parks each year. The projects coming up this year will be the north end improvements. Some major improvements through RAPS to the north end of Elkridge, kind of associated with the Pumpkin Walk, and throughout the entire year.
And just a note on that, the RAPS committee was so supportive of North Logan's projects, largely because of the Pumpkin Walk.
Yeah.
So we're lucky to have that support.
Definitely. Cemetery, the major projects coming up this current year, well, the past year, the big savings that we've seen in the cemetery department is the $36,000 we don't spend on culinary water every year. Now that's secondary water, that's gone down to $1,000 to $2,000 total in electrical costs. And then this coming year, they plan on putting a new shed. So they're still working through the designs on that, how to put that in, how that ties into the entire master plan of the cemetery. There's 47 acres up there, and only about 4 or 5 are developed as cemetery. And so tying that shed in a key location for future cemetery growth. We had recreation. Again, recreation, if you basically combine all of the other cities and every event, every program that they put together, everything they do, that still doesn't equal North Logan City. So that just puts it in perspective. Now, there have been increased costs lately. So those are final revisions to this current fiscal year. If you have questions about that, let me know. There shouldn't be any major anticipated for the coming year, but this current fiscal year, there are some changes, some unanticipated changes that we've made to the budget or proposed changes. So those are in the budget. But one thing to point out is 3 or 4 of these cities, if you combine all of the cities, remember, that equals North Logan City's recreation output. North Logan City still spends less than 4 communities within this valley on recreation, which is incredible. If you think about adding all of those communities together, they still don't match the output of our recreation department. Facilities, this is kind of a different budget. It's basically dependent upon other budgets that pay into the budget, and they provide basically the maintenance on all the buildings and insurance and safety for all the different departments. Jumping ahead, general revenue. We'll go over this in a minute. This is just basic revenue, taxes, fees that come in through the city. General expense, again, this is just expense for mainly office staff and a few other departments, the city council, mayor. Those fall under general expense, no major changes. Library, no major changes anticipated this year, but next year, obviously with the community center up and running, there will be probably some anticipated changes to insurance, to facility costs, and also to just personnel in order to keep up with the demands on all of the programming that they're doing. It's already exemplary. They're already #1 in programming and circulation, but I can't imagine how much more that will increase with the new community center, which is incredible.
Alan, I was just going to ask you, so as part of the previous slide, the court, that may change, right? The court expenses under general expense?
Yes, it will still come out of general expense.
Right, but
as far
we're
as
hoping it's less?
yes, and it will be less. There's no anticipated change this year, but the next coming years, it will be, that last line is related to the court, which
Oh,
will see a large decrease
I
in
missed that
expense.
line, sorry.
We're hoping, and I anticipate it will be about $70,000 to $80,000 less to run our court, which we won't run. The district court will handle that. Jumping ahead, water. This is kind of a statement that we have here. Hats off to the water department. I think we're doing more right now to address the needs of water within North Logan City, even after all of our conservation efforts, since its installation in 1934. You can't beat that because they had to install an entire system in 1934. But everything that's taking place right now, everything from the master plan, the modeling that's taking place, the chlorine contact chamber, a new well, and then a 4 million gallon tank that will go in starting next week or the week after. These are all huge undertakings in the city to address the water needs of the community and to meet the state regulations for that. Sewer, the only really change that you'll see is just the bond will be finalized for the trunk line. Several segments of the trunk line will be installed probably this next year. It's taken a while to just get that finalized through the DEQ. Stormwater, just like I mentioned beforehand, the master plan that's coming up for this next fiscal year. Our match would be 50,000, but that's over 2 years. And so we're asking for 50,000 from the CIB to fund the other 50,000 for that stormwater master plan for the community. Hopefully we can receive that, and that will be a huge benefit and guide a lot of the decisions that we make in the coming years for major capital projects. Not the day-to-day maintenance, but more the capital projects. Okay, overall fund balance, we're still short 199,000. We're gonna keep trying to whittle that down. We need to get around 150 is the goal because we end up balancing at that point. So we'll make cuts over the next few weeks. I will identify those cuts if any are made before the final approval of the budget. Just going through here, the only enterprise account that isn't balancing is RDA, but after this year, that's okay that it doesn't balance, just so everyone knows that, because after this year, our obligations to 2 entities will be met the 15 years, and then after that, those funds will just come to the city, and so we won't have those expenses. The other thing that's been recommended, and Scott, thanks for helping me out with this, but the fund balance is now at 25.2%. We would lower that to 10%, and that money would go towards the community center in the capital fund and the 2850 North roadway. So those are things we've saved up for years. Wages. I don't know how much you want me to go into this. This is a question from several of the council members regarding this. If you go through, just as an overall expense, it's basically 20% of the entire budget. Put that in perspective, most cities I bet were around, the ones I looked at were like 30 to 50% of their overall budget were wages and benefits. And so it's good to see that we're there. When we went through this several years ago, just so you know, North Logan City was 15% below the mean, the average for cities our size. And so it's good that we're getting at least closer each year. Let me do that. Trends, you can see this. So about 10 years ago, fire and police jumped significantly, but then they've kind of leveled off. I would say the last 3 years they've leveled off significantly because they've only increased by 3% the last few years. And so that's just general trends if you're looking at things. If you look at the facility line, the reason that one jumps like that is because of a capital expense. So it had to come out of the facilities department, and that's why you see the massive increase in facilities. The only other department I would say is recreation that's seen an increase. The rest of the departments from the general fund have remained relatively flat. You can see all the lines across there that just basically are flat from year to year to year. North Logan fiscal principles, if you just look through this, the reason that our property tax rate is in the bottom third of Cache County, our utilities fees on average, if you look at North Logan City's fees, are lower than most of the communities in the valley. How is this done? You look at the grants. So North Logan's received 14 million in grants over the past 7 years. Donations were at 12 million over the past 7 years. And then just efficiency with budget and revenue. Principles going forward, this is what I wanted to ask the city, the mayor and council, but we'll get to this probably after the public hearing. But it's really just, what are the best methods for the city, the legislative body, which is also over the budgetary aspect of the city? What things would you like to see? What metrics, what data, what would be helpful for you in the future? And I personally would love just constant feedback of things that we can improve on, things that you would like to see changed or modified in order to increase efficiency. I'm sure the department heads are open to that as well, because they kind of manage each separate department with the way that the budget format is set up. Sorry, I went through this. I flew through that PowerPoint. If there's any questions about anything related to this current fiscal year or the coming fiscal year, we'll address those in the upcoming public hearings. But
Yeah, thank you. I think this is a tremendous amount of work condensed into one PowerPoint, so I really appreciate it. I think it's also kind of tantamount, or it's all going towards trying to be transparent as a city and really having the council lead the budget. So I appreciate your efforts on this, and council, I look forward to really getting input on this, some real substantive input on overarching directives. And I think the council has been really great about saying, look, we don't want to be in the business of counting paper clips, but let's make sure that we're headed, that we're spending on money on things that we value. So, okay, thanks, Alan. We'll chat as a council about this, but let's open up the public hearing on this first issue regarding a proposed revision to the fiscal year 2025 municipal budget. So I'll give the instructions for this first public hearing, and then they will apply to all subsequent ones. Before you begin, please state your name for the record. Speak into the microphone so your comments can be recorded. Please limit your statements to 3 minutes. You're not allowed to combine or bank minutes to speak on behalf of others. Phrase your opinions in the form of statements, not questions. A public hearing is your opportunity to express your opinions to the city council, not a time to ask questions of or to expect dialogue between yourself and city council or staff. Please address your comments to the council, not the public. The council may ask questions about your comments in order for them to better understand you. In the future, note that if you have questions or a need to discuss an issue, you may meet with the city council members or appropriate city staff member before a public hearing where dialogue can take place. You may provide a written statement as your input for a hearing. You may read your entire statement or summarize it. The 3-minute limit still applies. You may provide a copy of a written statement to the city recorder. He will make copies for the city council, and the written statement will become a part of the public record. However, the written submitted statement will not be included in the minutes of the meeting. So with that, we'll open up the public hearing on this matter. Okay, seeing no comments, we'll close the public hearing. Council, discussion on this first item.
this first item is any revisions to the current fiscal year budget.
Right.
I actually really, this is not about that. I just really like the format of how we went through the budgets for this year, adjustments, and then proposed changes going forward. I just really appreciated that format. I thought it was really easy to understand. So just wanted to comment that.
Yeah.
I don't have any questions though.
I was just going to add the line graph. That's actually really valuable too to me. That's the first time I've seen that, other than when I reviewed the PowerPoint today. So moving forward, that's really nice, Alan, for us to be able to see the trends over time. Sorry, Kenny, I think it might be jumped over you there.
No, that's fine. So Alan, the budget revision that we're talking about on this particular item is FY25 R2. Is that?
Yes, that's correct. It's the second revision of this year. We used to do several revisions throughout the year, but I mean, there was no reason to do that. It felt like we were just trying to really move things around quickly throughout the entire year, but then you don't know how to improve for the following year. So we usually only do 2 revisions, one mid-year and one at the end of the year.
Mm-hmm. So in the budgets, the master budget spreadsheet, that would be column G, right? That we're looking at. I just want to make sure I'm tracking this correctly.
No, so we're looking at the adjusted, it'll be F is where you're going to see adjustments made.
Oh, so G
You'll
was
see
the original.
adjustments line,
Okay.
and then you'll see, let me pull it up real quick.
So G was the original proposal at the beginning of the fiscal year.
Mhm.
F is what we're adjusting to under this.
No,
resolution.
that's a great question. So E is the approved, that was the previous revision that the city council approved. F would be the proposed revisions from department heads, or city council, or anyone who's gone through. And then F 2025, the F 2025 proposed would be what you're considering tonight.
Okay, so that is
So
what I
G.
was.
Sorry, I was looking at the opposite direction.
Okay.
Okay. Any other comments? Are we ready to make a motion on this?
Yeah, I'll motion that we approve the revision to the fiscal year 2025 budget.
Okay.
Second.
Motion by Buzzy, second by Emily. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that motion passes unanimously. We'll move on to a public hearing to receive public input on our proposed fiscal year 2026 municipal budget. The city council may consider approval of a resolution following the public hearing. So I will now, do you want to speak to this or?
The only thing I would say on this particular budget is just, I wouldn't approve it in this meeting,
Okay.
regardless of what takes place. The only reason being is if we receive public input tonight or anytime in the coming weeks, it gives us a chance to make those revisions and then come and share them at the next city council meeting for approval.
Okay,
That's
sounds good.
possible.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll open up the public hearing on that with the previously mentioned rules. Okay, seeing no input, we will close the public hearing. Alan, does that mean, I mean, we could potentially approve it since there is no public input?
You could, the only problem is we'd have to notice another public hearing to approve it at the next one. But tonight you satisfied the demands for the public hearing, so at the next one, if we make a revision, we just have to share what that is.
Got it. Okay, discussion on this then from the council? And we'll table the potential resolution.
I would like to have more often, I think it's easy for us to forget about the budget because I feel like we get overwhelmed with it in the beginning of the year. And then we only hear about it when changes are needed. And it would be nice, and this doesn't even have to be in this meeting, just to get some information of kind of where we feel like the trends are going. Like, I love those line graphs, conversations that we should be having. Yeah, any information like that. I do enjoy trends. I like to see what we're doing. I like to see that. I think it's easy for me to understand and digest. I understand I'm asking for more work from you guys, and I don't love that.
So it's actually, we might be able to just easily do that without a lot of work. The reason we can do that is because Scott provides the monthly and quarterly reports. What we could do is just extract the data that the council would like to see and prepare some graphs for those quarterly reports from Scott.
That would be.
And to be honest with you, I just think anything we can make it that's kind of easily digestible for people to see, I'd like to show just because I feel like it can be a lot to look at a giant budget, but when you see like, this is the trend, this is the percentage that we're doing, I think that's just easier for people to understand like ultimate goals.
Let's do that if that's okay.
Graphs are great. We love graphs.
Do you like graphs?
With
I
more
love
colors.
graphs,
Good.
yes.
There we go. I was like,
I,
the engineer doesn't like
Yeah,
graphs.
that's right. I do think Mark asked some pretty good questions in an email, and Alan, I saw that you replied. I just came straight here from work, so I haven't even read your reply, but Mark suggested maybe some kind of like workshop similar to what we've done with a general plan, but budget focused, and I would support something like that too.
So if you read through the comments, that's a fantastic advice. And I would like to do what Emily discussed where we go through it. Because the way the department heads propose it, it is a workshop. It's in a discussion portion of the meeting. And so they're intended to be a Q&A type session.
Yeah.
So that'd be great. But then my request selfishly is that we have ongoing feedback to say like, what would you like to see throughout the entire year? Let us know. So it's not just, like Emily said, it's way too much to digest in one single meeting. Even if I flew through a PowerPoint, there's just too much over an entire municipal budget.
I can tell you one thing I'd like to see, like the trends are great, but then along with the trends, just some of the trends are a little concerning about how steep some of those lines are as far as increases. So maybe just a discussion on what we're doing, our courses of action we can take to control some of those costs.
That's great. We'll provide those, and yeah, just let me know. You can always email me as well if you just want any specific data. But Scott is very fast at providing the data regarding any particular item. I can't pretend like I know all of this, so Scott knows.
Scott knows all of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Kenny, you're half the representation on the police commission. That's a big part of it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other comments on this?
We need to officially table that.
I don't
Knox,
know.
it just says we may entertain. Okay.
Yeah, I don't think we need to. Okay, let's move on to a public hearing to receive public input on North Logan City compensation changes for municipal appointed, statutory, and elected officers for fiscal year 2026. Following the public hearing, approval of an ordinance may be considered to adopt compensation changes for city officers. Alan, do you want to give background on that?
Yeah. Um, This is an ordinance passed because some employees were trying to receive compensation or council members or other things in other cities, not North Logan City. And so they wanted more clarity regarding that. So this standard, it's already been proposed within the budgets. You've seen those things, but this is a separate item that the state requires us to do. So what is proposed in here is you see the maximum, not the proposed, but the maximum ceiling for increases for each of the departments. Sorry, it's for the elected officials and the appointed officials. So as you go through here, it shows the proposed ceiling of increase that would be within the budget. Doesn't mean that each of these will happen, but that's as high as it could ever go.
Is this based on performance?
Yeah, everything in North Logan City, and you guys can always change this, but per the city council, a lot of the cities, you'll see bigger cities. It's kind of interesting to watch this. They'll send out a survey every year. Every big city just does cost of living. So all they say is everyone gets this same exact raise, regardless of whether you've been coming into work or not. Smaller cities tend to be a lot more merit based. And so it's just, are you meeting certain criteria? Are you achieving your goals? Are you working very hard? And then that determines your raise. And really in North Logan, a lot of people achieve around that 5% that we always shoot for each year. Keep in mind, we're still probably below the mean in most of the departments.
Yeah, and Buzzy can speak to this, but we, at least in like 2022, we really focused on trying to get at least competitive so that we really do have such an amazing staff. And so we just have to keep up. So, and they are constantly trying to poach every single person here. So, okay. Any other questions on this? Okay, then I will open up the public hearing with the aforementioned rules, and that public hearing is now open. Seeing no comments, I will close the public hearing. Any further discussion on this from the council?
Just remind me, for elected officials, did we ever actually approve a standard 3%? We did? Okay.
What it is if the policy that was approved several years ago, because the city council would never vote themselves a raise.
Yeah, that's right. It's coming back to me now.
Yep.
I remember
If the city staff is receiving a raise, then the city council can't receive the same, but they can receive up to a 3%. And so that's kind of the policy that's automatic every year. But
It's like $14, just so you guys know. For the month.
Right.
Not even
For the month.
beverage.
So Alan, how did we arrive at 6% this year?
6% this year, what we normally do. So back in the day when we had the compensation committee that went over the city, we were average 15% behind every single department. Every single employee on average was 15% below the average for like cities. So cities just like us, or as similar as can be. And so at that point, there were some larger bumps, probably 7 to 8% for a couple of years to try and get the staff up to the same level. They never did get to that same level. But then every year, they sent across the state the anticipated raises across all of the cities. And the average is, this year, it's 6%. The city, in our budgetary proposals, shot for 5%. And that's an average. So some employees can get a little higher, some of them will get a little bit lower. But on average across the board, it's 5%. 6% would just be the cap that the budget could ever afford to do.
I think, Kenny, like one concern that I still have and have had for quite a few years is we developed a compensation committee that the mayor was referring to 3 or 4 years ago. Still couldn't get there, made progress. And so even though 6 is the cap, we're probably ended up at 5 realistically. We still cannot quite get. And when I'm talking like benchmarking across other communities in our valley, we still can't quite get there. So I think that's part of the reason why we've tried to keep that steady 5%, just to even at least keep that gap where it is, since we shrunk it a little bit.
Yeah, I guess I was just wondering like what kind of market analysis we do for comparative cities and other organizations in general to,
There's cities across the
Compensation
entire
community
state
too.
that have a
Yep.
similar population or budget.
Yep.
And so it compares all of those cities, probably 20 to 30 different cities that are very similar to us in size and budget. And
Actually,
then,
oh, sorry, Alan, finish.
sorry, it's always going to be apples to oranges though. You
Mhm.
look at someone like, I'll pick on Jordan. So Public Works Director, in several other cities, they look at water and sewer. Jordan has water, sewer, facilities, parks, rec, cemetery, and building inspection. All of those departments are under his umbrella. So it's really tough. There has to be some sort of a subjective. But even at that, he's still a little bit below the mean. That's the toughest aspect, when you see how much more he's doing than the cities that he's compared to, and still probably below the mean.
We have actually, it might be interesting I bet Alan can probably access it quicker than I can, but we have the spreadsheet, even though it's a couple years outdated, where you can actually view the data that was pulled through the compensation.
Yeah.
committee.
But
It was pretty eye
And
opening.
it was all polled. I mean, this is, because these
Yeah.
are public employees, this is not like hard information.
Yeah.
Fine.
Yeah.
and that.
It's good to see
but
that. Sure.
Yeah,
That 6%, I know we're calling it a merit-based increase, but it includes like a cost of living adjustment and everything lumped into that, merit-based or like performance and COLA and
We
everything
just
else.
do merit, but unless an employee is under some sort of disciplinary action, they'll receive a larger raise. It'll be 4 or 5%.
So no COLA is actually called out, but
Yeah.
informally there is a minimum that's
Yeah. And I guess that's the kind of analysis that I'm used to seeing is that they'll break out COLA and a merit-based and then like a location-based adjustment if necessary, so that you can kind of see, because the COLA does vary widely from year to year. And so
Yeah,
if we're just doing the same percentage every year, it doesn't seem like we're taking that into account necessarily.
they don't do those market analyses though, because when they run into that, you just have the big cities that just give massive COLA raises, and then you have an entire staff of people not working hard, just knowing that they'll get a COLA every year.
Mhm.
I think like the opinion of the council historically in my time has been, let's merit base it, understanding that the department heads and Alan will always have at least a minimum. If the council wanted to move to something like a COLA or something like that, it just, at the time, it made more sense in the way it was being managed. I haven't seen any problems with it since, but I think that was the direction over the council over probably at least 6 years, I would say now.
And I think the other thing is like with COLA, it assumes that you're at, like, I think we're still playing catch up. And so,
We're always behind.
yeah, so I think you could do a COLA. I guess it's just kind of semantics. Like if you want it broken down, fine. I think what we're trying to do is comply with that new law that says you have to do a public hearing on this. And so we're just trying to hit the requirements of the law.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I don't think that the law will accomplish what it's trying to do. Like, I think that it really just makes it an awkward situation. I think ultimately we trust the department heads to say, to do that analysis and say, where are we budget wise? Like look at it a little bit more holistically, rather than having it be, the city council who comes into it and says, I don't know, are we paying our water assistant enough? Like I don't want to be involved in that. I want the department heads to give us that analysis. So I think that's kind of been the thought process, that we're kind of just the gatekeepers and we set that ceiling and then turn it over to the department heads to make that proposal and within the constraints of their budget as we've set them.
Yeah. Yeah. And that is interesting that we're always playing catch up, because I feel like this year, I think there are very few organizations that are going to be giving their employees a 6% increase based on just economic conditions and other uncertainties. So hopefully that helps us catch up at least.
But that's actually
I don't
not
know.
what I've seen. Like
Right.
if you've listened to like Chief talk about it, we're falling short of what other agencies are doing. Chief Thompson, maybe you can speak to that, but there's a ton of pressure, at least where police are concerned, they're still doing those bumps.
Hmm.
And I think particularly it's tricky to keep up with County and Logan in this. Like I think they're always, and USU for that matter, I think we're always trying to keep up.
Oh, USU, I can assure you is not giving 6% increases this year.
Right, because they're cutting tenured professors. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
We're still
We-
low in the valley
we're
this year.
behind Brigham City, if that says anything.
in municipal employees or,
If you were to try and go find a job, I'm sure you two are hearing that they pay better.
Let's not talk too much about that, Joni.
Sorry, just to let you know that we keep good people because they're here obviously not just for the salary.
Yeah.
I make the
So,
positive
and
effort.
really, I think also to kind of clarify this, we're setting the ceiling. And so where the 6% doesn't fit into the budget, like, are we doing a 3% raise for council members?
I think we
Yes,
have
it's
to.
built in.
That's the problem is unless that was what was so weird about that ordinance when we passed it is it didn't really give us an option unless we redid the ordinance, right? Yeah.
Mm.
I'd be happy to donate that $14 back into
Yeah,
the
I
general
know.
budget.
I'm the exact same way.
So, okay. Any other comments on this? Then if not, I would entertain a motion on that resolution. Or that ordinance, I guess.
Joni said she wants to take this one.
No.
Let's see you dive in. All right, okay. Motion to approve the compensation changes for municipal appointed statutory and elected officials for fiscal year 2026.
Okay, motion by Buzzy,
Second.
second by Emily. Any further discussion on this? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that motion passes unanimously.
A motion out to
Yeah.
RDA.
You got this, Joni.
Motion to,
So I motion that we convene as the redevelopment agency, RDA, to hold public hearings to consider adopting a proposed revision to the FY 2025 RDA budget and proposed FY 2026 RDA budget.
Okay, so motion to convene as the RDA. Do I have a second on that?
Second,
Second by Kenny. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, do I have a motion to adopt the agenda? Motion by Buzzy.
Second.
Second by Emily. All in favor?
aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we'll start with a public hearing to receive public input on a proposed.
Just a minute. Would you mind approving the minutes?
oh,
Oh, so that didn't fall under that blanket? Okay. Then I would entertain a motion to approve the April 9th, is that right?
And May 14th.
And May 14th RDA meeting minutes.
I motion that we approve the April 9th and May 14th RDA meeting minutes.
Okay, motion by
Second.
Emily, second by Kenny. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, then we'll start with a public hearing to receive public input on a proposed revision to the fiscal year 2025 RDA budget. The board may consider approval of a resolution following the public hearing. We will adopt those same rules as expressed in the city council meeting. So with that, we'll open up the public hearing on this. Seeing no comments, we will close the public hearing. Council, any discussion on that revision?
The only thing I would bring you up to date on is just the two things we discussed. If we move forward with, it's a discussion item tonight, but it's regarding kind of the wayfinding master signage plan, which is intended through economic development. And so it would come through the Gateway Urban Renewal Area portion. That's the $60,000 right here. That's just a place saver to say like this may cost this much. A portion that would also come out of parks, a portion that would also come out of streets, impact fees. And as you look down through here, the only other thing I'd bring up is that that's that allocation we talked about in the past that once the financial obligations are met, that would not continue forward, at least the vast majority of it in future fiscal years. So just so you know. But then we'll probably have to have some revisions in this coming year if certain businesses are up and online and operational. So McDonald's and Rush are both operational this year, which there's a slim chance, but maybe this coming year they will be operational. Then those CRA monies would have to be approved by this redevelopment agency board.
Okay. All right, then I would entertain a motion on that revision.
I motion that we approve a proposed revision to the financial year 2025 RDA budget.
Okay, motion by Emily, second by Buzzy. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, then we'll move on to a public hearing to receive public input on a proposed fiscal year 2026 RDA budget. The board may consider approval of a resolution following the public hearing. So with that, I will open up the public hearing on this matter. Seeing no input, I will close the public hearing. Alan, anything to say on this one?
No,
Okay.
it's just kind of the same thing.
Council, anything?
So is this fall into the same category as the municipal budget? Would we want to hold this for next meeting? Or it
No,
doesn't
this
matter in
one's
case?
okay because I don't anticipate any major changes.
Oh, it's only 'cause
If
we
there
renovations.
are, I'll let you know, but yeah, I don't anticipate any major
Okay.
changes to this budget.
I was going to say the budget, it really hasn't changed since you
Yeah.
proposed it the first time.
Okay, do I have a motion on that?
I move that we approve the proposed financial year 2026 RDA budget.
Okay, motion by Emily,
Second.
second by Joni. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that motion passes unanimously. Can I get a motion to adjourn the,
Motion to adjourn?
okay, motion by Buzzy,
Second.
second by Emily. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, can I get a motion to convene as an local building authority?
So moved.
Motion
Second.
by Buzzy, second by, I think, Emily. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay,
I motion that we adopt the budget, adopt the agenda. Sorry.
okay, motion by Emily,
Second.
second by Buzzy. All in favor?
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Okay, and then do we have those same minutes? Okay, from April 9th and March 14th, or sorry, May 14th
I motion that we approve the April 9th and May 14th minutes.
for the LBA. Okay, motion by Emily,
Second.
second by Joni and Kenny.
Oh.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that motion passes unanimously. We will first have a public hearing to receive public input on a proposed revision to the fiscal year 2025 LBA budget, after which we may consider approval of a resolution following the public hearing. So with that, I will open up the public hearing with the same rules. Okay, seeing no comments, I will close the public hearing. Any discussion from staff or council?
Hasn't changed.
Okay, then can I get a motion on that?
Yeah, motion to approve the proposed revision to the fiscal year 2025 LBA budget.
Second.
Okay, motion by Buzzy, second by Emily. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, and then we will have a public hearing on the 2026 LBA budget. With that, I'll open up the public hearing with those same rules. Seeing no public comment, I will close the public hearing and ask if there's any discussion on this. And if not, I would love to hear a motion.
I motion that we approve a resolution for the proposed financial year 2026 LBA budget.
Okay, motion by Emily,
Second.
second by Joni. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that motion passes unanimously. Can I get a motion to adjourn? Motion by
Second.
Buzzy, second by Emily. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion to convene as the city council.
So moved.
Motion by Buzzy,
Second.
second by Kenny. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
Motion for a water break. I'm just kidding.
You're really tired after all those. Okay.
Any
So we
structure?
are on item number 7, which is a public hearing to receive public comment on the submission of an application to obtain financial assistance through a grant or loan from the Community Impact Board. The funding request will be used to complete the North Logan Stormwater Master Plan. This would serve the North Logan City stormwater system. Alan, do you want to give us background on this?
Yeah, this is an application to the Community Impact Board. One of the requirements is to hold this meeting, hold a public hearing to receive public input regarding the application for these funds. What is being proposed is a 100% matching grant. So the total grant or the total project will cost $100,000. It'll probably come in under that amount, but you have to put in the max amount that this project will cost. North Logan City has to match it 50 or 100% of that. So we put in 50. CIB is what we're requesting is 50,000 from them. We would pay our portion over 2 fiscal years. So it'd be this coming fiscal year and the following fiscal year. This would be to create a stormwater master plan. We do not have a stormwater master plan in North Logan City. We have a stormwater department, we have operations, we have everything set up that handles this. It's a very strict department that kind of has several mandates from the state that we have to abide by. But we don't have a stormwater master plan that would really govern what capital improvement projects we would have over the next several years. And those include things like regional stormwater facilities, what pipes connect certain canals and things like that. In the past, we've known certain areas where we just put together individual plans, but this would be a city-wide plan for everything that takes place throughout the city. And keep in mind, back in the day, stormwater as a department, obviously they planned for flood waters, but stormwater as a department didn't really exist until the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s, especially the early 2000s. And so if you look at an older portion of a community, let's just say Logan, a lot of the communities in Logan had no water provisions. All the stormwater just went into the canal, which ends up in rivers throughout the state. That's why they're so strict about those things. But that overwhelms the canals because canals get smaller as you go to the end of the canal instead of bigger to handle all the stormwater. And so that's why these departments are very essential because it creates basins, it creates requirements for storage, retention, and detention throughout the city. So sorry, that was an over lengthy description of basically what we're applying for with the CIB.
Okay. I will open up the public hearing on this CIB funding request. Seeing no comments, I will close the public hearing. Council, questions on this?
I have a question on the canal size. So up here, 2,700, 2,500, 2,300, it's how wide? Do you know?
The canal itself,
Mhm.
I would say 15 feet wide,
And then it shrinks down to,
a foot, once it gets past Hyde Park.
wow, okay.
2 feet, it's a ditch when you get to the end of these.
Bless you.
Thanks. Bless you. Okay.
But it gets smaller as you go out, and then where it ties into the Bear River and Little Bear River, those were those canals. And on our portion, it's the Bear River.
That was just a curiosity of mine. I didn't realize it got smaller, so.
They were intended for irrigation by the pioneers. They weren't intended for or stormwater.
They weren't intended for floaties.
Seeing the same thing, floating down them. I miss those days.
Me too. Okay, cool, thanks.
Okay. Any other questions on this?
So Alan, are we approving anything tonight, or this is just to hold the public hearing?
I think you're approving. I'm trying to look for that, whether there's a resolution, but I think it's just the holding the public hearing to receive input and approving, probably just moving forward with the application of that.
Do we need to make a motion?
I think you should. If you want.
Why don't you, Emily?
Perfect. I don't know, approve the submission or the continuation of the process of submission for an application to obtain financial assistance to a grant or loan from the Community Impact Board.
Okay. Motion by Emily.
Second. Oh, sorry, Johnny.
I think I gave it last to Kenny, so I'll give it to Joni.
Excellent.
Any further discussion on that?
Oh, this feels like
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
Shout out to the hard work that's been done on this.
Yeah.
It's really nice to see
Yeah.
this kind of stuff.
I signed the document 3 separate times, just
Okay,
so everyone knows.
Good job, Mayor.
Job signature. Your hand must be tied.
That's
It's
good to
really
see.
tired. Okay, let's move on to item number 8. Consider approval of the zoning map amendment rezone of 6 parcels located along 1800 North, 800 East. The rezone request seeks to upzone the subject properties from A10 to R110. Okay.
This is Scott Perks. I
Okay,
won't even
Scott,
attempt.
take it away.
Yeah, so Alan's got the map up here. Alan, if you also want to queue up the staff report, there's a couple of exhibits in that document I think will be helpful just to provide context to everybody here. So as the request indicates, there's some properties along 1800 North near 8th East that are part of this request, going from agricultural A10 down to R110. So to provide some history and context, so those are the parcels that are part of this agenda item for consideration there. There's 6 parcels in that area. Again, they're all zoned A10. If you want to scroll down just a little bit more, Alan, there's another exhibit here. This is from our 1977 zoning map, which is shortly after zoning was adopted in North Logan City in the early 70s. You can see those subject parcels are substantially similar to back in the 70s. And at the time, zoning was a new concept, and the city applied some very broad zoning districts throughout town. And you can see this area was zoned as A10 or agricultural 10 acre. So essentially you could have 1 home per every 10 acres. However, those parcels there they've had homes on there since the mid to late 50s, so they predate zoning, predate the subdivision ordinance as well. So certainly grandfathered, those parcels would be considered legal, non-conforming to the current zoning. So Alan, if you want to scroll down just a little bit more, there's another map showing the current zoning of the subject parcels and the ones around it. So there you'll see in the A10. What's interesting is, if you know the context of the properties around here, majority are owned by Utah State University. They're research farms, so they are in ag production. And we have a couple of hodgepodge zones further to the east between our RE1, RE2, R120, R110. So it's kind of a smattering of zones in this area, not highly coordinated, but what the intent is with this request is to help some of these parcels become conforming to a zoning classification that actually fits their size, but also to clean up some potential future zoning for future development on one of these parcels. If you want to hop over to the Exhibit A in the staff report, this is a concept plan of what would be intended if the zoning change were to be requested. One just quick important note of clarification. When the application was submitted, it was initially requested that the 3 parcels closest to the intersection, so those 2 lots that front on 1800 North and then the larger piece to the south, those were the original parcels part of the submitted application. They were requested to be zoned R112. And as staff was reviewing this application, we looked at this and said, there's additional properties to the east that are in a very similar situation. And this might be a good opportunity to clean up the zoning, allow them to change their legal status from legal non-conforming to simply conforming. So we thought, hey, let's look and see if we can clean up some zoning through this area. So you'll see that the request has been modified from R112 to R110, which would allow for the smaller lots further to the east, which are almost exactly 10,000 square feet, to fit within the zoning that might be applied. Okay, so let's look at this example image here. The request, when it first was submitted, was looking at how do we potentially allow for a home to be built on that second parcel from the intersection. And right now there's no access really to it. There's no curb cut on 1800 North. And to be honest, we don't necessarily want a curb cut on 1800 North given the proximity to the intersection. And so what the applicant, Steve Taylor, here in the audience, if we have questions for him, what he had proposed was that we not have a curb cut on 1800 North and we provide rear access off of 1800 East. And what this does is actually helps in a lot of ways. It protects the access to this future development lot being too close to the intersection, and it pushes it further south on 1800 East than if it were to be on 1800 North. So essentially, we would be closing an access point to the corner lot. You'll see that there's an existing access right where the cursor is. We would close that, and we would use the shared access easement to the south to provide access to the corner lot as a side entry to that existing garage. And then it would be a rear entry to the second lot from the intersection. And it would also continue to provide access to the agricultural remainder behind. A couple reasons why this is highly coordinated and beneficial is obviously proximity to the intersection with safety. Cars can come out of that access with their nose facing the street versus backing into the street. We also anticipate that there will be a roundabout at this intersection, which is part of our transportation master plan. And with roundabouts, you need more room for acceleration, deceleration for those right-hand turns. So pushing those access points as far away from the intersection is beneficial. So it kind of cues up this intersection for improvements and allows us to hopefully have a best safety outcome going forward. So the intent here is if the zone change is approved, there would be a subdivision application that would shortly follow that would use this configuration for some property line adjustments, and for these access easements to be dedicated. So you'll see in the staff report, there's a recommendation that a development agreement accompany this zone change, and that this Exhibit A be imposed as a condition of approval. So we would expect to see a future subdivision application follow this this configuration. And if it doesn't follow this configuration, then the zone change would actually revert back to the existing zoning. So they have to come back and retool it if they needed to make some changes. Let's see. In a nutshell, I think that's the majority of the configuration. The Planning Commission did review this, held a public hearing for this at their last meeting. We did have a couple of individuals speak at that public hearing. Primarily, their concern was about that future roundabout and access points either being allowed or not allowed under this future building lot. But ultimately, the Planning Commission did provide a unanimously positive recommendation. Do you guys have any questions for staff or?
Yeah, there's only one thing. It looks like the property owner of that corner lot spoke.
He did.
Was he in approval of the access point as you've showed it to us?
You know, he would have preferred to keep his access off of 1800. I think it was his preference. But obviously, you know, having the zone go through with a rear access is preferred over no zone approval.
Sorry, so he has access. I'm looking at the corner house on 8th East, not 1800. Am I misunderstanding that?
Yes, you're correct. So that home on the corner does have its access off of 8th East.
And
His
it wouldn't be-
concern was that the second lot in, parcel in, his preference was that it would be able to keep an access off of 1800 North, and we would be conditioning this approval to not allow access off of 1800 North. He owns both of those parcels, and for that reason, he was advocating for that access point on 1800. So that was understood. His comment was not directed to closing the access point on 8th
it was
East.
to the second, but he would be okay
Allowing
with that
both?
then?
So he'd be okay with closing the access off of 8th East for the corner lot and using that access easement further to the south.
Okay.
So Scott, that access further to the south requires, it looks to me like it requires some land from the J. Greg Lambert parcel there, right?
Correct.
So is he in agreement with this?
So there was an application that was submitted jointly with those property owners. They submitted acknowledgements to allow Steve Taylor to act in their favor as an agent. So yes, they are all in understanding of this concept plan.
Why does this not have to go through Planning Commission for approval first?
It does.
Oh, it did?
They
That it's-
unanimously recommended it.
Okay, I've just seen that in the agenda. That's what threw me off. Okay.
Scott, why, if these homes predate the city's zoning map, then why were they zoned A10 to begin with?
It's a very good question. I think that the city just used very broad strokes in that first zoning map. This is a new concept back in the 70s. You know, zoning throughout the United States really didn't come into play until mid-century. So, you know, we have the city adopting it in the 70s. It was brand new. And honestly, after it was first adopted in early 1970, it really wasn't followed super carefully. But when they did adopt it, it was very broad strokes. And these homes all predated. And so they just said this district of town, A10, one home per 10 acres for any new development after the fact. These were already in existence. So they said, well, you're there, you're established. Any new subdivisions, any new homes need to have 10 acres apiece. So they've been non-conforming from the very beginning, which I think it just wasn't as acute of a zoning map as it could have been.
With that, I'm going to open up the public hearing with the same rules as previously mentioned. Oh, is it not a public hearing? Oh, we already did the public hearing. Oh, look who also hasn't been paying attention. I'm just in public hearing mode. Okay, then
We
is
have
there,
just done like 6 of them.
we'll open up the public hearing for the council.
I'll motion to approve
I
the zoning
really
map
like
amendment
this.
of the 6 parcels located at 800 North and 800 East and accept the staff report and all facts and
Facts.
findings from the staff report.
Okay.
You also want to ensure that they memorialize the submitted concept plan with the development agreement?
Yes, I do.
Yes, you do.
Yes.
Councilwoman Schmidt.
Okay, I'm going to consider that a second from Emily.
You should.
Motion by Buzzy.
I'll second too.
Um,
I'll have to just add too, I like that it's getting the main driveway off of 1800 just for safety. When you have that roundabout, taking that off there is helpful.
Okay,
Although 8th East is just about as busy as 18th North in that intersection.
Yeah, it's
So-
true. Is the
But
roundabout.
it's
I think
not
it's just
closer,
the-
it's further away from the roundabout though.
different
the-
intersection.
I-
True though.
Yeah.
I
Main
would, I guess
circling
for me, I
around it.
would prefer to have, if I see it, I like the idea of them being able to back out onto their little easement property and then always
I
go
agree
nose
with that.
first. I just
I do
really
agree
like
with that.
that. Just
Yeah.
feels safer to me, even when it's not busy.
Yeah.
okay. Other comments on this? Then I will say all in favor. Any opposed? Okay, that motion passes unanimously. Okay, let's move on to consider approving the recommendations from the fire chief regarding the dates, times, and geographic boundaries for the sale and ignition of private fireworks in North Logan City. You're back.
Thank you, Al. So, it is fireworks season, whether we like it or not, and I'm happy to report that that is the cleanest zone in the county right there.
Alright.
So congratulations. Very easy to patrol. I think we got that squared away last year, and I think it worked very well. And as you know, just a quick summary, it is kind of difficult to predict and know what additional closures could be coming when we've just turned June. We'll just see how it goes. Sometimes additional closure requirements come from the Utah, Fire Marshal's office. So here today, we're okay. And what I would be proposing to you would be the date of restrictions will run from June 24th, 2025 through July 25th, 2025. Firework sales and discharge dates are as follows. Division 1 4G, which is people typically know those as the Class C firework that you buy at the sales stands. Those can legally be sold June 24th through July 25th. Additionally, the Division 1 4G Class C firework may be discharged between the hours of 11 a.m. and 11 p.m. July 2nd through July 5th. Hours are extended to midnight on the 4th of July. And then again, July 22nd through July 25th, with hours extended to midnight on July 24th. And then additionally, our fire marshals will be hanging closure signs along the 1600 East the 1600 East Road on July 24th or by June 24th, sorry, and then they will be removed by July 26th. And then as well as at the sales stands, there are flyers and posters indicating the closed areas. The one I should have sent Alan as well, just so you can see how nicely this connects now along our coverage area. This connects, we adjusted the Logan boundary back to 1600 East. So for our patrols, makes it clean. It makes it less confusing for residents that were maybe on the boundary of North Logan and Logan. Legal on one side, not the other. It was problematic. So it really helped clean things up last year. So, but that would, unless there's questions on the fireworks part of this, that would conclude that recommendation.
Do they have to have permits or do they pay for anything to sell those?
They do,
fireworks?
and they're inspected. Yes, yes. The fireworks booths.
Uh-huh.
Yes, yeah, and our fire marshal has to inspect them all.
And by what date?
I'm not sure the date of when they have to be inspected. They can't sell till June 24th, but I can find out that information from Craig and get it out to you. I'm not really sure when they have to apply. That's a good question.
Wow, thank you.
But they'll start popping up here pretty quick. You'll see the shells will start coming really fast.
So I'm curious, Chief, just since this is covering the year, do we not have any time restrictions for New Year's Eve that need to be accounted for? Or do we just ignore New Year's Eve? It's winter.
Yeah,
Because I know it's not just fire.
No, it's actually a
safety,
really,
it's like-
really good point, and I do believe in the state code that it is allowed
there?
and opens for that little time period, but where they're so far apart and then the risk of fire, because this really comes from our risk of trying to control any type of wildland fire or fires that could get away with that could get away from us in these hot
Yeah.
hot season. New Year's, everyone shoots them, and I do believe it does open for a small period of
Yeah,
time.
where you were calling out the hours, that was more my question
Yeah.
should there be a line there for New Year's Eve that's like, I don't know, 6 p.m. to 1 a.m. or something like
1
that?
a.m. Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't know.
People love that time of year
10
too.
p.m.
And keep in mind too
10
that
p.m.
with
It is a little
fireworks
bit
are unique.
less severe for sure.
And you may get actual
Light 'em.
questions as the council or even with Alan from the city. Is there are private shows that people fund that tend to say, Green Canyon has already shot fireworks, not covered by this. They're able to do that as long as they're inspected by the fire marshal and they meet all the requirements of the Utah State Fire Marshal.
And they get a permit, I assume, for that when it's outside of they have to get a permit for that?
Yeah,
Okay.
they do have to get a permit, and they have to submit the proposal and what their plan is, and then it's a pretty rigorous inspection process for the private shows. But with there being money involved and a lot of people wanting to be entertained, they tend to. We're seeing more and more of those, so it's something that we'll continue monitoring. Some of our cities have actually limited the amount of private shows they're allowing in seasons because they're getting pretty popular.
Didn't we do that, I think, a year or two ago? Because we had somebody that was saying there's one every weekend, it felt like. to
Yeah,
them.
we did have
Yeah,
an issue with that.
large
every now and then.
corporations love to do it for their family parties and things. It was getting really popular for a while. So some cities are like, okay, that's plenty of fireworks.
How many are we getting though a month in the, Alan, how many do we get a month? June, July? Like, yeah, for people to do like fireworks. I don't
Well,
feel
you've
like
got
it's
the
too
high
much.
school. Yeah. Yeah.
What's our,
At Elbridge Park.
Yeah, your parks. Excellent. That was a great move. That was a good move. Because they really do get it gets difficult to manage them because some of these are big shows like big corporations like Campbell and Cytiva and nothing against them at all.
Service.
They're awesome, great companies, but they can throw
Yeah.
some parties and pay for big fireworks shows, which require standbys and things of that
Weddings.
nature. So
do you feel like the fees that we charge cover the cost that we're spending to do fire mitigation for those?
for
Like,
the
I know that they have to
A month.
pay like a certain fee to do a fireworks show depending on how big it is. Do you feel
Mhm.
like the fees that we're assessing are covering the cost it takes for you to be staffed? Like, are we adequately charging?
100%.
Okay.
Yeah, in fact, that's an excellent question. We just changed that fee for the standby. So if they're going to do those types of shows based on the size of the show, it requires a certain amount of staffing. And so they pay for the coverage, for example, of a brush truck or a fire engine and those firefighters, because that is above and beyond everything we're doing.
Yeah.
And you can't afford to rob 911 services to stand by for an hour or 2 hours. So yeah, we just adjusted that, Emily. So it's an excellent question.
Okay.
Yeah, it absolutely does. Yep.
Correct.
Thank you. Any other questions on that part?
I'll motion to approve the updated fire mitigation area map for North Logan City.
Second.
Motion by Buzzy, second by Emily.
Sorry, I'm so sorry. We did the wrong thing.
Oh,
I seconded
it's
something.
the
Oh, geez,
Approving
yeah, that's my
geographic
mistake.
boundaries.
recommendations regarding
Consider-
the dates and times.
Yeah, thank you.
We
Let me
trust
approve
you
that.
though, chief. Okay, so I will modify that motion to geographic boundaries for the sale and ignition of private fireworks. I think that's a motion by Buzzy, second by Emily. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, and then will you just speak to that fire mitigation area map?
It's already approved.
It's already approved. Buzzy, you can't just approve things when we haven't talked about them.
Chief, which one do you want me to open up? There's 2 or 3 maps.
This is perfect. Thank you.
Okay.
This will work. So, and I apologize, but this is a map that's under development. So and I know it's fuzzy, but it's very important, I think, tried to make sure our cities, particularly the cities that have what we call the WUI. Okay, the WUI is known as the wildland urban interface. North Logan has a significant amount of it that potentially is high risk for wildland fire because as we continue to build these beautiful homes up into that area, the risk of wind-driven fire becomes more and more concerning. So back up a little bit to January, House Bill 48, which was passed and ran very rapidly, to me on the heels of devastating fires in California and Maui. Those two big fire events, wind-driven fires, caught a lot of attention. As you know, at the legislature, once you have emotion involved, they usually steamroll through there, and this one absolutely did. And with it has kind of left fire departments, insurance companies, kind of trying to find, okay, where are we at and how do we control, obviously paying close attention to the realities of the WUI, but also how does that affect your citizens in your cities? So if you can, it's kind of gray, and I apologize, there'll be better maps coming, which will be out by the end of this year. This isn't something we need to worry about tomorrow. This won't go into effect until January 1, 2026, but we're having to deal with it now because we have to take your old mitigation maps. This is the new state map. This comes from the DNR, and I snapshotted it for you so you can get a feel what we're dealing with. You can see my amazingly awesome red line there that I've drawn. I apologize, but I had to do that real quick just because they don't have, I didn't have any other tools for this, just to give you an idea. You can see subdivisions, the upper bench at that line. In House Bill 48, I would just challenge you when you're wanting to read a law, look at HB 48. We have to designate now a high-risk area. And we're working with the state to ensure that that impacts our bench residents of the least amount as possible, because the more that it does, we're pretty sure the more phone calls your city will get with angry residents about the cost of their homeowners insurance and their fire insurance. And in fact, this particular law, I know as good intended as it was passed in Oregon and has since just, they've actually abandoned it in Oregon. It went very, very bad. Number one is because insurance companies looked at this and said, oh my goodness, we've got $1 million home in a high-risk area. We can't afford to insure them. So either insurance premiums were going up, and in California, there's story after story of homeowners being dropped completely or not covered. We don't want to see this turn into that.
Yeah.
So we're trying to be as proactive as we can for our cities, North Logan and Providence. River Heights is unique. They actually don't have WUI, officially, but North Logan and Providence have some high value homes high on that bench. So it's just to kind of put it on your radar. The mitigation process is being revamped. We still get credit for the mitigation maps in terms of being covered in case there is a wildland fire, but this is another whole level of that we're still trying to figure out how it's going to shake out. And so the state, the fire marshal's office is working closely with the insurance representatives from the state to ensure that, hey, we got to make sure people aren't not being covered. And they've got some assurances initially, but that doesn't mean they couldn't be dropped in the future. So once we know that line, we'll know much better what to share with you as a council, so you're informed and like, hey, here's the reality. There's got to be an inspector that declares these areas as high risk. They do an inspect, and there'll be actually someone designated through the county, through Cache County. Every county in the state of Utah will have to designate that person. A lot to play out here, but this was a big development this year. I hadn't really seen legislation like this move that quickly, and but it's here, and we'll try to keep you informed and do our very best to minimize the effect that line, and we're hoping to have a lot of control and say on that line.
So that red line is kind of the point at which it's
High risk.
substantially high
Ye-
risk.
Yeah, so Al, could you just scroll up just a little bit? So at the bottom, I tried to ensure that, see these lines here? So I've changed the transparency a little on the maps. You could see your neighborhoods behind it, but where it's red at the bottom of the map, that would indicate an area that's most likely going to be deemed high risk by the state of Utah. And so why I drew that line for you, it follows that pretty closely. But we're hoping to see that move a little bit higher into the forest area there. And we're pretty confident that it will, but I don't believe that everyone will be unaffected. There will certainly be homes that are going to be very, very close to the high risk area.
Buzzy and I would like to request an island.
Yeah.
You what?
We'd like to request an island up
Oh, you
there.
want the
We
island?
both are potentially impacted, so.
So,
One of us
a
has
couple questions on that the council have asked, and the mayor.
I mean,
So the only properties that would be potentially affected by this would be areas east of that
Solid
very
line.
rough red line.
Correct.
No road.
I
Um,
worry, I understand the desire to try to protect homes and to fire mitigate as much as possible. Wind-driven fires are very dangerous. I do wonder though, are we asking too much of citizens to all of a sudden be like, hey, you're not gonna be, I mean, I just feel the idea of telling them we're not gonna insure you feels very, I feel like we need to give them a path to insurance, whether that means, hey, we'd like you to install X, Y, or Z. Is that an on the table right now while you guys are trying to shake this out? Like,
No, another excellent question. So, Representative Snyder, he has a fair amount of wildland background. And obviously he was working closely with the Division of Natural Resources. And so really to me, Emily, the best thing that can happen, this is one of those things we have to get involved and ask, hey, Representative Snyder, how are these talks going with the insurance companies? Because that's what we've been assured. Hey, we're going to be talking to insurance companies, but insurance companies are going to protect themselves as well. They've got interest in making sure that they don't go bankrupt. Like they're going to have their stake in the game here. I certainly hope, and that's why we're hoping to have a lot of influence of that line. That's the thing that helps us.
That's my question, Chief. In looking at this line and going through this, obviously this is a rough line. And you've taken the stab at just outlining roughly where that will be, obviously knowing that it will change. What are some things that like who can be involved in this discussion as far as things taking place? The reason I say that is because this has come up several times in the past. Looking at this, obviously I know this is a rough line, but this would be an example of a question that will come up. The cemetery is in this, obviously. So things like that, obvious things where the line should be skirted a little bit further east. And then as you get to the north end of our bench, looking at this area, you're looking at kind of the Mahogany Ridge area above that. There's no fuel, I would call it. You can probably speak to this further. Above that line, there's no fuel for about 400 or 500 yards going up the bench that's above a grass. And so all you have is grassland through that area. Now above that, you'll hit the junipers. But these are my questions. If people have these types of questions or concerns about realistic areas that have a fire potential, how much involvement can the community have or elected officials in discussing these items?
Well, one thing that's going to really help us is once we know who the representative is for Cache County, we could have a lot of influence.
Okay.
And what we're trying to do through our fire marshal's office, so you have Chief Keller, who knows the area very well. We have established maps through the DNR, history of mitigation maps that show what North Logan has done to mitigate as much wildfire as possible. We need to share all that information with them. So the Utah State Chiefs, the Utah State Fire Marshals, all working with the state of Utah in developing these maps. We've had a couple of meetings with our GIS people in Logan City. I have provided them everything from North Logan City, Logan, and Providence to ensure our service area has the best opportunity of sharing all the information they have in terms of where that true high risk area should be. And we're optimistic. I just like to be super realistic though too with you. I don't want to say, oh, it's going to be fine.
Yeah.
It's super important that we make sure we are involved in that line. So as this thing develops, what I'll do is just keep you informed. I'll send emails. If we need people to talk to, hey, we need this kind of help at the state legislature and to influence, Representative Thompson, Representative Peterson, Representative Snyder, they all voted yay. So it's super important we involve them.
One other question is with the Bonneville Shoreline Trail, because when we applied for several funds for that, our current grant is through the UORG, but the previous grants we were applying for were for a fire mitigation grant, because the Bonneville Shoreline Trail is intended to be 8 to 10 feet wide throughout all of North Logan City. It'll be above probably 80 to 90% of all future, I'd say 95% of all future homes on that bench when it's finally installed. And so that's a question that comes up is would factors like that play into a moving of the line east or west?
Okay.
Obviously with consideration that yes, the fire can jump the trail, but it is a fire mitigation
Yes.
trail the way that we're going to design it, and also access to fight
Yes.
fire.
Yeah. So, and really that would be a great segue into the other map, the mitigation map. I just wanted to kind of show you what work was being done right now, that it was a big deal and we're working through it. So the next map, we do have the mitigation map. So I guess as part of my, my official recommendation here is that's the area that Alan's referring to, the areas that we have been doing mitigation work here in North Logan City. So I would propose that we, obviously adopt that area and continue work there. This is really important information to be able to provide the state in building those high-risk areas and protecting North Logan from very, very costly wildland fires in the event a fire does jump from North Logan boundary into the Forest Service. That's really why we do this. At the end of the day, the simple thing is you do this work, the state pretty much gives us the assurance that, hey, in the event a big fire pops from North Logan and goes up the mountain and it turns into a $5 million fire into the Forest Service, North Logan's safe. And that to me is super important insurance.
So Chief, this mitigation map is showing what is the mitigation we've done in that area, just the formation of the Bonneville Shoreline Trail up that ridge line there, or have we done other mitigation activities?
Alan might actually be able to help me a little bit more with that, because if you go
is the
down even a little
BST.
bit more into Green
Definitely the
Canyon,
trail.
there's been work there that's been documented over the last couple of years in terms of keeping weeds down, controlling vegetation. Alan might have some more additional info on the Bonneville shoreline work that's been going on for a little while, but typically it involves keeping brush and grass at a very reasonable amount. So it doesn't, I mean, even what we would call a flash fuel, even like the grass Alan's talking about, after a wet spring, as it dries, you get that wind driven, it'll drive 20, 25 foot wavelength or flame lengths off of it, even with a 15, 20 mile per hour wind. So even in those areas that seem like there's not a lot of fuel, those flashy fuels can be pretty devastating. So
They move so quickly. We had one in Harriman and somebody
Yeah.
parked their car on the grass.
that's right.
And it wasn't even like that. They just pulled onto it. And because of how hot the gas tank was, it started a big fire up there. So
That's right.
the only concern I have is there's just main one road. So if we saw a fire like we did in Harriman, at least there was plenty of roads for people to get out. But the fire department was also based right up there, so they got to it quickly. I get really worried that we have so many homes and just that one access. So I guess for me,
Just a correction on that.
please help me.
There's 4 or 5 accesses. However, just at this point, to go into Wildercrest, there is one access.
Yeah.
And then we have the emergency on 2500.
Yeah. So there's 5 different
To
access
drive
points to get
But
up
you
to
have
the bench.
300 and what, 10 plus homes?
Yep, and then you have the emergency access down through the cemetery. So just a point of clarification there, that there isn't just one access point to get to the whole.
Well, I'm going to say one main one that I see when you're up on the south side for all of those people to get out.
I'd say
so-
2 main ones at that point.
You could probably get through. I'm just saying we had to get out and I know how many homes that we had there. So I would love anyway. I mean, I think the mitigation with the trail is great, but that would be my only big concern is what does the city's liability run into in the future if something like that were to happen?
Yeah, and so currently, which, evacuation routes are super important. Typically, they're part of the, your emergency action plan for your city. I'm sure Sandy has done a great job with that. That's probably a part of that. She's very active in those things. And our emergency manager is currently working on the exact concern you have. We do have some bottlenecks in Logan as well, that evacuation routes are few. And there's more and more people living up there. But, like with what Alan said, to me is I've ran on a fair amount of fires over the years up in this area. And, the 1800 North route, that gets us into Green Canyon. You've got the 1500, 2500 gets up there. I mean, there's a fair amount of roads that I think get people out. But I would actually really like to see where Sandy's at with that. She's probably done a great job with it and probably has those things.
Would
That's
it
typically
help?
part of your emergency action. So.
Yeah, so would it help if you had an emergency training and those people that live up there, now they're a part of it so that they know that the city's working on?
I will say that we have been, like even in the last
have.
2 months or something, they've done that in Mahogany Ridge, and Canyon Ridge. So we have a really robust emergency response team. Like,
Do.
so, like, so I think this is more an issue of us maybe knowing what that is. I think I think that'd be good. I think, you know, but I think there are plans in place and evacuation plans. It's just a matter of maybe we are a little ignorant of them. So,
Well,
okay.
and I think too, what we do with this area that's been outlined in yellow is the hours spent, you know, in the detail in terms of the line items on that. Councilman Reese, we just say, okay, you know, Public Works, the mowing people went up and they handled this acre at the mouth of the canyon. It took us 10.6 hours, or we spent this much amount of money. So we document those by line, and then that information is submitted to the state. They look at that and say, well, because of North Logan's size and how much exposure you have to the WUI, you need to spend X amount of hours in that area to qualify. And so we just document that by line item each year for you. And that's where that comes up with. Sorry, I didn't feel like I answered your question,
No,
very well,
that
but that's where
helps.
that comes from.
I think that's
Thank you.
great.
Okay.
Yeah, documentation.
Yeah,
Okay.
any other questions on that? So
Let's move this along. Do we need to approve that fire mitigation area map?
Yeah, just this map, not the previous one.
Okay.
That's
Okay.
the one coming up.
All right.
I
Can I
will,
get a
I will
motion?
move that we approve the updated fire mitigation area map for North Logan City.
Okay,
Second.
motion by Kenny, second by Emily. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thanks, you guys. That motion passes unanimously. We'll now move on to consider resolution modifying Article 4 leave policy of the North Logan City Employee Handbook, specifically related to annual leave accruals. Alan, are you going to talk about this? Karen is overseeing to make sure you don't misspeak.
Perfect. Karen helped put this together. Just looking at this. Okay, just looking through these items. I'll go through this quickly. What this was is back in the day, the vacation accrual, both the times, they've been changed 2 or 3 times over the past, I'd say 6 to 7 years. Originally, it just rewarded employees who had been here for 15 to 20 years. And so you basically had to stay here for 15 to 20 years to even get the vacation amount that most other entities saw around 10 to 15 years. And so we've adjusted those over the years. And what we've noticed now is we probably do need to bump those up even more at this point to match a lot of the other entities that we've talked with, a lot of the other public and private entities. But then the biggest issue is that when an employee starts with North Logan City, they used to start with 0 vacation or sick, and then they just accrued that over time. I think they started with 1 day, and then we moved that to 2 days that they got up front. And now what we're proposing is that they have 56, which is a week and 2 days. The reason we're proposing that is because most employees, when they're hired, they normally have a vacation planned that week. And so what we're seeing is the employees that are hired, they really struggle for about 3 years after they're hired just to even go on a vacation. And what it's hurting is our ability to recruit and also retain. And so what we're looking is really just a way to bring us more in line with a lot of current hiring practices where the employees are given those hours up front. And then it helps the employees because they don't have to stress. Literally stress about vacation hours every month of every year. What happens with most employees throughout the city is once they hit 4 or 5 years, then they're not in a point where they have to stress. They just schedule their vacations with their supervisors and plan accordingly at that point. And so this is an effort to bring us more in line with other cities and to also help with recruitment and retention of employees related to these items. A lot of employees have come to us after we proposed this and talked about it, and they are extremely appreciative. I asked them at that point why they didn't say anything earlier, and they just didn't want to whine. But they said it was very stressful for them their first few years having enough vacation. So this just helps get employees off on the right foot.
Yeah, I think this is great to get kind of cleared up. And these are kind of the small things with big impacts that I think we can do to recruit people. So any questions from the council?
I have a couple questions. So I see that we're labeling this as annual leave. Does that mean that there's a separate like sick leave pool that people
Correct.
can use?
We kept sick and annual leave separate. A lot of entities have gone to a PTO
Right.
type format. We keep the sick and vacation, and it coincides with the rest of our own policies.
Okay, so, and my other question was, I understand, like you say, why you would adjust that first column to the duration of employment that's in there, but it looks like we're also increasing the amount of annual leave accrued for the 10 years plus employees, right?
To bring it more in line with several other entities, including USU. That's what they have.
Looks like between a day and a half for each
Yeah.
of those.
That's a slight adjustment to bring it more in line.
Okay.
Is there a reason why they used to go with 84 or now 60 months instead of 60 months to 5 years?
No clue. We just had those in there. That's kind of just the standard policies.
Make me wonder.
Okay. Can I get a motion on this then?
I motion that we approve resolution modifying Article 4 leave policy of the North Logan City Employee Handbook, specifically related to annual leave.
I'll second.
Motion by Emily, second by Joni. Any other discussion? All in favor?
I,
Any opposed? Okay, we'll move on to consider approval of a proposed appointment to the North Logan City Planning Commission. Tracy Walker is leaving on to preside over a church mission in Florida, I think.
Florida.
He leaves, his last meeting will be tomorrow. He's been phenomenal. We've just really appreciated his service on the Planning Commission, wish that we could keep him around forever. I have asked Deidre Hartwell, who I've worked with on the library board, or the Friends of the Library, I think. I can't remember which she's on, but she's really politically active and is just really motivated to be the kind of planning commissioner that comes prepared and makes thoughtful decisions. And I've asked her to serve on the planning commission as an alternate. We will then bump up Porter, right? And she would become an alternate that serves in the event that any of the planning commissioners are absent. She'd have a vote. Did I miss anything, Scott? Scott's done a phenomenal job at onboarding planning commissioners. I think that process has improved markedly since a lot of us served. So kudos to you on that. Anyway, any questions from the council?
motion to approve Deidre Hartwell as a new member of the North Logan City Planning Commission.
Okay, motion by Buzzy,
Second.
second by Emily. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that motion passes unanimously. Let's consider approval of a draft request for proposals for the composition of a master signage and wayfinding plan for North Logan City.
Yeah, I think we've gone over this slightly in the budget updates. What this is a request to have a firm come in and provide a master signage plan. What this would do is, if you just think about it this way, it would provide us guidance for a uniform city signage plan. So entrance signs coming into the city, park signs and wayfinding. What you'd have in the parks is you'd have interpretive plans that would say, here's the park layout, here's the distance on the trails in the parks, and then trail signs that would do the same thing. All of these things would be uniform, and we would have a theme that they would follow for all of the city. Also wayfinding to find your way around the city. You'll see these in a lot of cities that point directions to certain features. So get to the HSC or to the city offices, the civic center, city center in the future, those types of things around the city. So that's one element of it. The other element is to help update our private signage plan. And so for a business coming in, it would have uniform standards for businesses coming in throughout our community, obviously along Main Street and along the future Wolfpack Way, where we'll have several businesses, and it would provide guidance for those areas. This kind of helps with placemaking in North Logan City. The funds to pay for this, obviously we've discussed, would come out of the RDA, which has an economic development component to having a signage plan. And then also, it can't fully come out of there though, because there's elements that benefit just parks and just streets. So those portions of this plan would be paid for out of those departments. But this would be a request for proposal from firms. And essentially, this is just to keep the council up to date and see if you are in approval and if you have any comments as to what you would like to see.
What's the cost on this?
We just put in a rough estimate of $60,000 to $80,000 is what this would cost.
60 to 80,000? I'll do it for $2.
Awkward you bring that up, Joni, because we've been working on this for 3 to 4 years now. I'm actually super excited about this. I think that, I think it goes, I think it goes a long ways toward kind of, Joni, to your credit, like, I think you've been really pushing for North Logan stepping into an identity, and I think this is all part of it, whether or not
I'm just teasing, but I'm like, that's a lot of money.
it is. We'll
So
rely
how
on
much-
your design expertise for sure, for free.
Yeah. Happily. So the RDA is gonna pay for a portion of this, is that correct?
Yeah, the vast majority of this will come out of RDA and then the other departments will pay for it.
And we don't know what the cost of the proposals will come in at. They could come-
When is the, when are you hoping to post it and how long would it be open for?
Probably the next couple of weeks, we'll look at posting it and we'll leave it open for 2 or 3 weeks and just see what type of proposals we get.
Well, I hope somebody comes up with something because I have to admit, I think we've done really great with the rooster. And I don't know, oh, Joni's making a face, so
I like the
obviously
rooster.
I like the rooster myself. In fact, I had multiple people ask if they could buy a North Logan shirt. And I went, I actually don't know. So we should consider that as an option. That way Alan can get a raise.
Okay. Any other questions on this?
No, but I can make a motion.
Okay.
I motion that we approve a draft request for proposals for the composition of a master signage and wayfinding plan for North Logan City.
Okay, motion by Emily,
Second.
second by Buzzy. Any further discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes unanimously. All right, we'll move on to our work session items. First, an update regarding the North Logan City General Plan and City Center Master.
Yeah, so just real quick, just a reminder, the planning commission is continuing to work through text amendments to our land use ordinance. It's a big job and there's a lot of red lines. So anybody who wants to follow along, I would recommend you try to keep pace and be engaged throughout the process. If you want to be engaged, you can go to the nlcplan.org website and follow all of those Google Docs. You can make comments anytime. You hop in one of those documents, read along, make a comment. So that's where we are looking to implement the goals and policies of that general plan that was adopted back in February. And then additionally, we did just receive our first draft of the form-based code that will be used to govern development in the city center. So that'll be an exciting conversation that we have with Planning Commission later this month as an introduction and a first read through of that draft code. So we will look forward to making some adjustments, looking through that with the Planning Commission, and ultimately it will be part of that larger text amendment that is likely to come to the council later this year as a large ordinance for final adoption. So that's where we're at with City Center Master Plan and general plan updates. Any questions on where that's at?
Not from me. Anyone else? Okay, thanks, Scott. How about our water capital improvement projects? I would have preferred to have Jordan do this under the influence of post-surgery drugs, but
And I'll wing it here. Really, the 2 or 3 projects that are taking place right now is the chlorine contact chamber associated with our treatment plant. So that was partially paid for through a grant, and they're putting that in right now as we speak, which will be fantastic. It'll increase our ability to utilize the water coming out of Water Canyon, and it'll increase our capacity up to 1 million gallons per day, which is fantastic. And then as you're looking at the other projects taking place, we had our pre-construction meeting for the tank that's going up just south of Wildacrest subdivision, along with the associated piping that ties to Green Canyon and distribution lines that start feeding throughout the city from that tank. And so those are the things that will take place in the coming weeks. They'll start those major projects. We'll send out some parliament messages too to announce those projects that they're going forward.
okay. Thanks, Alan. All right, let's get reports from city officers. Tonight, Scott, I don't want to hear from you. I want to hear from Aaron. will introduce you officially as our new Planner 1. Welcome, Aaron. This is such a huge thing for our city. I think it really is what sets us apart from other cities in the valley, particularly in terms of really prioritizing smart growth and city planning. And I think I can't unsee it now that I've kind of seen behind the curtain with the planning process. When you go to other cities, you can see the ones that were planned with a lot of thoughtfulness. So really excited for Aaron to join us. We poached him from the county, which is even better. And really excited to see how Scott utilizes him to take some of the big things that we're doing off your plate. So welcome, Aaron. Do you want to give us any reports? Scott can play cleanup if you don't have anything.
This is his, second, third day on the job, so.
Come on.
Give him some
This
grace.
is initiation, Aaron.
We expect a lot.
He's
so-
reading a lot of code right now.
Okay, do you have any updates, Scott?
No, just wanted to introduce Aaron. Welcome to the city. We've got a lot of things to do. We're really excited to be forward thinking as a community, and I think we've shown that we've started down that path with our general plan, our city center master plan, and it really takes a concerted effort to think forward versus be reactive, and that's a huge goal of ours. We don't want to be surprised. We want to be ahead of the curve. So we're making good strides in that direction.
Aaron, we're a rough group, so good luck.
Yeah.
You could probably tell.
Okay, Scott Bennett. Okay, Friday is the deadline for filing, and there's
Okay.
still
okay.
time.
You doing it right there? Is that it right there?
Alan.
Just a few events. I'll go over these quickly.
So
And thanks to everyone who helped with Memorial Day. That was fantastic. Library reading kickoff was also fantastic. They have a very large attendance at that. It's a good problem to have where you where you have your library kickoff where you have that at a park because it's become too big to hold at the library. And that was a major event this week. So hats off to the library for putting that together. Just for the council and the mayor, we'll have a library site visit. That's on June 9th, noon.
That's this Monday, right?
This Monday. And what it'll be is Trent will go over just updates on everything that's happening with the library. So if you can make that for that hour or at least for a few minutes.
Right over here at the library.
Right at the library.
Okay.
Great questions. We'll just meet there. And let me know if you have any questions before then. And Touch a Truck, that's actually a major event that one of our staff members started as just kind of a term project or semester project for recreation. He's still on board, and so he still does this each year. It started out as just a fun project to get a grade in a class, and now there were 3,000 to 5,000 people that attended the Touch a Truck last year, the year before. It's a major event, and it's really all it is they bring out all the different trucks from the different departments. Police and fire come as well, public works, vehicles and equipment, and kids just climb all over them and honk the horn. So it's a really well attended event. Thanks to all the departments for putting that together. And then it just has a few of the other events. There's a movie in the park on the 24th. I think Coco is the movie. And then Scales and Tails. They have to hold that at the HSC because it's become so large. I can't remember. No, I don't know how many people attended last year, but
It
in
was
the hundreds.
huge. I was there.
Yeah, and I think they
It
had
was really
multiple
cool.
showings. It is
What is that? Scales and tails?
Just they have like a show with like lizards and
Reptiles.
reptiles.
It's so fun.
Like a big deal.
Your kids
And
might be
birds,
a little
right?
old for it, now
Yes,
that I'm
there were
thinking
birds
about
last
that,
time.
But I'd love to see you come.
Okay.
Those are all the events coming up kind of this next month, including the free skate night at the Ice Center. We coordinate with that with them for years, so that's a great event. And then the employee summer party, that's June 30th. So keep all these on your docket for this next month. It's going to be a kind of fun, busy month coming up.
Okay. Thanks, Alan.
Did
All
we
right.
nail down a date for the North Logan Hyde Park barbecue? I see that there's a question mark on that still.
So I will speak to that. I believe we're going to do it the 24th because the 26th there's like an American Festival chorus event. I think that's what we landed on. So I can't remember if that was better for you, Kenny, or not, but we'll do that. And I think that's such a cool event. Like, I don't know if there are any other sister cities like that who have that collaboration. I think it's been hugely beneficial to our cities. So, but I'll get back to you on that.
Sounds good, thanks.
Yeah. Okay. I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay, motion by Buzzy, second by Emily. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Man, I
Look
cannot
at
You know,
believe
we
got
do
through
have
that
to give
agenda
it
that
The
quick.
end time.
to
That's
the
impressive, you guys.
Good job.
Thank you, dear.
Right on time.
I want this. But we ended on the right time.
Something I need from Leslie and Tony and Kenny